between worlds. Pavlovich stood at the edge of reality again, her dark hair whipping in winds that shouldn't exist in the space between universes. Next to her, as always, was Parker, his copper-brown skin glowing with the ethereal light that leaked through the cracks in space-time. They'd been here countless times before, yet the vertigo of seeing infinite possibilities stretched out before them never quite faded. "Ready?" Parker asked, extending his hand as he had 10,000 times before. Pavlovich looked at his offered palm. Her own hand moved toward his with the certainty of muscle memory, yet she hesitated for just a fraction of a second longer than usual. "Something wrong?" he asked, his voice carrying that note of concern that always made her heart flutter in ways she'd spent centuries trying to ignore. "Just thinking about the first time we did this," she said, finally clasping his hand. "Remember? The quantum storm over Prague?" Parker laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the void. "How could I forget? You were so convinced I was a hallucination brought on by that experimental physics experiment gone wrong. And you thought I was a temporal terrorist trying to collapse your timeline." She smiled at the memory, but there was something wistful in it. "We were so young then." "Speak for yourself," he said with a wink. "I'm still young in at least 7 alternate timelines." That was the thing about their friendship. It existed across multiple versions of themselves, through countless iterations and possibilities. Sometimes they were colleagues, sometimes rivals, sometimes they saved each other, sometimes they saved worlds together. But always, always, they found each other. The nature of their relationship had become something of a quantum uncertainty principle unto itself. Simultaneously intimate and distant, romantic and platonic, defined and indefinable. There were universes where they had married, others where they had never so much as embraced. This version of them, the ones who walked between worlds, existed in a perpetual state of possibility. "Do you ever wonder?" Pavlovich began, then stopped herself. But Parker knew her too well, knew every version of her too well, to let it go. "Wonder what?" "If we're doing the right thing, playing quantum hopscotch across realities while our original timelines move on without us." She squeezed his hand tighter as reality began to blur around them. "Sometimes I think we're just running away." Parker turned to face her fully then, his free hand coming up to brush a strand of hair from her face, an intimacy they allowed themselves only in these in-between moments. "Running away? Pavlovich, we've saved entire civilizations. We prevented the chronosphere collapse of 2389. We restored the lost colors to the monochrome universe. That's not what I mean, and you know it." She met his gaze steadily, something they did less and less these days, as if afraid of what they might see reflected there. "We're running from this. From defining whatever this is between us." The void around them pulsed, responding to their emotional resonance as it always did. In the distance, they could see fragments of their shared past, the Library of Alexandria, where they'd hidden for a decade, translating texts that would have otherwise been lost to history. The crystal spires of New Manhattan, where they danced at a gala while simultaneously diffusing a temporal bomb. The quiet cafe in Paris Prime where they'd spent 3 years pretending to be normal people, until the multiverse had called them back to duty. "Maybe," Parker said softly, "what we have can't be defined. Maybe it's like quantum superposition. The moment we try to measure it, to pin it down, we collapse all other possibilities." "Is that comfort or cowardice talking?" Pavlovich asked, but there was no bite to her words. She'd had variations of this conversation with variations of him across countless realities. Sometimes it ended in passionate declarations, sometimes in tearful goodbyes, sometimes in comfortable silence. "Both? Neither. Does it matter?" He squeezed her hand as the void began to crystallize around them, reality reforming into their next destination. "What matters is that in every universe, in every timeline, Through every possibility, we choose each other. Maybe not as lovers, maybe not as soulmates in the traditional sense, but as us. Whatever that means. Pavlovich felt the familiar pull of a new reality taking shape, and with it came the comfort of knowing that whatever version of them emerged on the other side, they would face it together. You always know just what to say to avoid actually saying anything, she teased. I learned from the best, he replied with that crooked smile that looked the same across every universe. Now, shall we see what adventure awaits us this time? As reality solidified around them, Pavlovich thought about all the versions of them that existed across the multiverse, the ones who had kissed, the ones who had never dared, the ones who had built lives together, the ones who had parted ways. And she realized that perhaps their truth lay not in any single version of their relationship, but in the sum of all possibilities. They stepped into their new reality together, as they always had and always would, their fingers intertwined in that space between friendship and forever, their hearts beating in quantum entanglement across all possible worlds. The mystery of Pavlovich and Parker wasn't meant to be solved, but to be lived, again and again, world after world, possibility after possibility, in that eternal dance of almosts and maybes and what-ifs that somehow added up to everything.